folks, welcome back to My Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor and this is a slightly belated September reading wrap up. Apologies for no videos the last couple of weeks. I was at Conflux 2 weekends ago at the same weekend as the new Taylor Swift album dropped and the new season of Face Off Inside the NHL dropped. So I was super busy, did not get a lot of sleep and then was super tired. And then this last weekend, I was just not feeling fabulous, honestly. But it's time to get back into things, talk about what I've read, and you probably get a fair bit of content from me next weekend because it's Dewey's. So what I read a lot, and it's actually distinctly, I was going through it, it's distinctly in two halves of the month of September. You had the first half of the month where I was reading quite interestingly, doing well, settling in at work, feeling secure. Then halfway through the month, I discovered my team was being split up. Because my director was leaving, I was going to have my third supervisor this year. And I got stressed. And there was a distinct change in my reading. You can tell. Because funnily enough, the second half of the month is pretty much, yeah, you guessed it, entirely Jane Austen variation novels and short stories. Yeah, that happened. But I did read 13 things overall, and it wasn't all of that. So we'll get through the interesting stuff first. So, I started off the month by rereading Check Please, Volume 1. Hockey. I don't have my physical copy with me because I've actually lent it out because I actually managed to talk a colleague into reading it. But I did also read, and this is actually fourth on my list, but I also did reread Check Please Volume 2, Sticks and Scones. There it is. Both of these are by Ngozi Ukazu, of course. You know me, I reread these at least once a year. I love them dearly, dearly. Bitty and all his pie baking and queerness and hockey. And you know how much I love hockey these days. So I reread both of those. I also finally got around to finishing A Fireborn of Exile by Aliette de Bodard, which was the last book I needed to read, I think, in the Z universe. So that was a novel. So I've read all of the short fiction, all of the novellas that I could get my hands on, and all of the novels once I realised there was like novels in it as well. So A Fireborn of Exile. I still don't think I love it as I love a couple of the novellas, but it was very interesting. So it was very much about the idea of revenge and justice. So this is this space opera universe with mine ships based on Vietnamese culture. And so we've got a small area on the outskirts of the empire where the same couple of people have been in power for about 10 years since a rebellion. And so you've got a mix of characters, some who are the children of the powerful, some who are lowly tech people who are getting given odd jobs. And then you've got a new stranger who's a scholar who starts moving around, and you find out this person was one of the first people executed as part of the rebellion. It just didn't stick. And she has come to get justice from the people in power that railroaded her, that were so harsh on her for more than what she, for just speaking her mind, essentially. It's implied, at least. But she also starts making connections with all these other people. And so it's like, how, after 10 years of plotting, how far will you go for justice or revenge? How much collateral damage is there? Are there people you want to protect? So it was very interesting. And the people in question, looked like they deserved justice because they were overly harsh in the way they ruled, in the way they made judgments, in the punishments they meted out, even to their own family. So, yeah, it was interesting. It was very interesting. As with all of the ZR universe, pretty much queer, written by Elliot de Bollard, who's of Vietnamese descent. So, those first 3 reads, I'm doing well with the writers of a non-Caucasian background and queerness. They're all both. So that's good. That was a good start to the month. I also listened to the audiobook of Take 6 Girls, The Lives of the Mitford Sisters by Laura Thompson. So I have previously read this before, but I had, when it came out on BritBox, I had completely out of nowhere, I've got no idea what triggered it, but I binge watched the first season of Outrageous, which is a fictionalization of the Mitford sisters and their story. So I was like, okay, I want to reread that biography, like re-listen to it, and just kind of see if I can pick up on which bits are fictionalized, which bits are not. So, it's all in the detail, which, I'm not good at remembering details, but things like, for example, the sort of queer Jewish bestie that Nancy has in the TV show is actually an amalgamation of a number of her friends, but not actually a real person. But, there are definitely things, particularly about the more problematic Mitford sisters, which were exaggerated for dramatic effect. For example, there was a scene that I really, really liked in the TV show where Churchill goes off on a rant to Diana about standing up to Hitler. So I'm pretty sure that did not actually happen. Diana, I believe, did raise the possibility of them meeting. I don't think that rant happened. But it was really good television. And said some really important things. But yeah, so that was interesting as a reread and an audiobook. Then I also read Adrift in Currents, Clean and Clear by Shauna Maguire, which is this year's more recent School for Wayward Children, Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children novella. This one, I have not actually got a physical copy of it yet. This one was nice, but I don't think it was particularly interesting or meaningful. So it was the backstory of Nadja, who is a character who's come in and out throughout the series, a disabled character, so there was a disability rep. She was born without an arm. And it's definitely got a lot to say about adoption, particularly overseas adoption, because she was a Russian orphan, essentially disabled Russian orphan who was adopted by an American couple who wanted to be seen doing the right thing. But there was some really interesting discussion about her relationship with the concept of her arm, her lack of arm, and a prosthetic that she did not want. And bodily autonomy. So there was some interesting stuff there, and it was basically her backstory when she first went to her world, which was an underwater world with turtles. But plot-wise, it wasn't the most interesting story that she's done in that world. And yeah, so not my favourite of that series, but that series is always worth reading, and I'm now caught up, so I'm ready for the next one to come out at the start of next year. So that was fun. What else? And then I think we must have hit my stress levels going through the roof because we've got a whole slew for the rest of the month of Austen variations. So, A Cat Who Loved Mr. Darcy by Laura Nickleby. So this was a fairly short one where Lizzie has a cat who is an excellent judge of character. And the cat likes Mr. Darcy, much to everybody's shock. Dislikes Mr. Collins, dislikes Mr. Wickham, obviously. But because she trusts her cat, that puts a slight difference on her interactions with Mr. Darcy from the start. Then we have In Sickness and in Health by Frances Reynolds. This one, there is starting when they go to Netherfield in the rain, Jane goes to Netherfield in the rain, Jane's illness is actually not a cold, it's the beginning of a smallpox epidemic, because she's been out to see the tenants and the tenants come down with smallpox. So everyone at Netherfield, so Lizzie is isolating at Netherfield with Jane. Lizzie has, I think she previously had it as a young child or something, or she's just naturally immune. But also some of the men at Netherfield who end up, if I'm remembering correctly, ends up including maybe Colonel Fitzwilliam, or maybe maybe it's one of the militiamen, one of the officers in the militia. I can't quite remember. There's definitely a military character. It's been a while and I've read a lot. They have actually been inoculated with that very early inoculations, and so they act as messengers for the apothecary, who's also a doctor, who's like pretty much mostly double trained, going from house to house because they've got the inoculation, checking on people every day. And during this essentially emergency situation, Lizzie and Darcy get to know each other very well. Then I read The Wallflower, also by Frances Reynolds, and in this one, Lizzie and Jane have gone to London to stay with the Gardners, to have a social season, and that at a London ball is where Mr. Darcy says what he says at the Meryton ball in the original. But that has a completely different effect because it labels, in London where Mr. Darcy is known, it labels Lizzie as unmarriageable. And so she becomes a wallflower, she bonds with other wallflowers, and it takes Darcy a while to figure out what he's done. And that actually her wallflower status is his fault. Not that Lizzie particularly minds all that much. She would like to dance more, but, she's also happy just having friends who she can be honest with. And then I read another really short one called Orange Roses by Frances Reynolds, and this is one in where they meet as usual in Meryton, but then Bingley and Darcy, by happenstance, meet Jane and Lizzie again at the Gardners. And suddenly realise, those relatives in trade that we were so concerned about, not actually a concern. And there's this whole symbolism thing with orange roses. Then I read, there was a lot of them. I read The Cheapside Runners by Wade H. Mann. And The Cheapside Runners is one where Mr. Gardner runs his own version of the Bow Street Runners, but instead of being for crime, it's for protecting young ladies from rakes, kidnapping, all that kind of stuff. And as it turns out, as you get through the book, the school that is also recommended by Mr. Gardner, a course that is run to teach young ladies what they need to do to keep themselves safe in society and to teach them what the consequences of being ruined is actually run by Lizzie, and has been run by Lizzie since she was a teenager, when she had a break with her father, because her father refused to protect her from such a situation, which did end up getting sort of covered up, but she has mostly lived with the Gardners since, and she's a lot of a harder character. And you actually get, you actually find that not only does things happen that mean she gets permission to bring her sisters on put her sisters on the course, but Miss Darcy is also on the course. Because Darcy has been convinced Georgiana needs to know what the dangers are. Although I believe it's post Wickham, so it's like, you've got to do this. And then Eavesdroppers Never Hear by Wade H. Mann. So this one, Lizzie overhears one of the conversations at Netherfield where they're talking shit about her and Jane after she's come back intending to get her reticule and then go back up to Jane. And because she then immediately goes back up to Jane, and Jane is awake or wakes up and realizes Lizzie is unnerved, upset, she makes Lizzie tell her what happened, and therefore Jane and Lizzie go, yeah, no, we're not having this. We're not going to be treated like this by these upstarts who have come into our society, this new money. And so they insist on going home. First thing the next morning, and if there's no carriage available, they will ride Nellie. Even though Jane is very ill, and even though Lizzie has to walk, they are determined to leave. And they make their displeasure clear, and then that shames Darcy, and it shames Bingley, and they have to figure out how to be better people. Then there's two more. We've gone through 11, two more. Great Uncle Henry is another new Shana Grandison one, and in this one, they have a great uncle on the Bennet side who went away to India and found his fortune. And he's come back and searched out his family, and he's kind of looking at them going, who might inherit my wealth? Not my nephew and his wife, because they will just squander it all. So which of my nieces is the most sensible, the most intelligent, the most caring and compassionate? Who's gonna, I want to get to know my nieces, but I also want to figure out who is responsible enough for my fortune. And finally, we're up to number 13, Despite Difficulties by Jamie Marie Lang. And in this one, it's quite a short one, I seem to remember. A young Elizabeth is in London, in Hyde Park, comes across young Darcy being bullied by Wickham and a friend, stands up for him despite her fear, throws a rock, scars Wickham. They never see each other again until Netherfield. Lizzie recognises Darcy, and then Darcy says what he says at Meryton, and Lizzie lets him know how disappointed she is that Darcy, who she saved from bullies, has now become a bully. So, and that changes the tone of their interactions entirely. But it also means Lizzie recognises Wickham by the scar and is not fooled. So that is what I read in September. It was a lot. It was in two distinct halves. I'm glad I had a really good first half where I actually read more broadly. I got stressed. I reduced myself to comfort reading. I'm hoping this month will go a bit better because, as I mentioned at the start, Dewey's 24-hour readathon is this coming weekend. I plan on participating. I have also booked the entire week off work following that, just because I need a bit of a rest. And I'm hoping to continue get into a good habit of reading for most of that week. We'll see how we go. I've just become completely obsessed with the Traitors UK. It's a bit terrifying. But I haven't set my TBR yet, but my idea for the readathon is to focus on books that are on my currently reading pile, of which there are a lot, because I actually have picked up and started quite a few physical books this year. But haven't finished any of them. So that's probably going to be what my TBR looks like. Whether I stick to that TBR, who knows. But, so you might get a TBR video from me on Friday or Saturday. And you will probably get a vlog after the readathon finishes on Sunday night or on Monday. So yeah, that's what's on the plate for me. Hopefully I have calmed down a little bit, and with a little bit less stress, I can go back to reading more widely, because I was starting to make some progress, both with visual drama and fictional drama. And then things spiraled again. But maybe the fact that I'm watching The Traitors UK means I'm ready for the drama again. It's certainly dramatic. Okay, I'm going to go before I babble myself into oblivion. Bye.